So I'm Julie Dunsmore. I'm the director of our graduate program in the Department of Psychology. We have 4 concentration areas for our doctoral programs. There's clinical science, which is our clinical psychology program, developmental science, industrial organizational psychology, and neuroscience and biological psychology. First is our clinical science program. This is an APA accredited program in clinical psychology. We're very proud of our clinical science program. The program tends to be highly rated every year, and in this program students get excellent training in research in clinical science and also in the practice of clinical science. So as researchers, they're learning about different ways to study the causes and the treatments of mental disorders. And in the practice component, the clinical practicum, they're getting excellent training in conducting assessments and administering therapies with a particular emphasis on empirically based treatments. Our developmental science program. For more information about that, you can also look at the video clip by the area director, Kirby Dieter-Deckard. This is a program that's focused on training research scholars in developmental science. So students in this program get very research-intensive training on how to conduct research at various points in the lifespan on processes related to human development. And moving on to our industrial organizational psychology program. Our industrial organizational, or IO psychology program, follows the guidelines set forth by the APA for training in industrial organizational psychology. The main focus, as in all of our programs, is research training, how to conduct research related to industry and organizations with a focus on human systems. Students also get experience through externship or applied opportunities to practice industrial organizational psychology within different workplace settings. Biological psychology program, the focus here is very much on training research scholars in areas related to neuroscience and to psychophysiology or biological psychology. So the central focus for all of our faculty in that program is things related to do with the brain and the body. The training is very intensively focused on research, and students tend to go on to careers that are going to be either within academia, research-focused careers, or in other kinds of settings such as hospital settings, research-focused careers. The application deadlines for each program do differ, and you can check on our webpage to see the exact deadlines. The application itself is not different, though. We have the same basic criteria across all 4 concentration areas. What we're looking for, we do ask for GRE scores, the verbal and the quantitative GRE, as well as the writing portion of the GRE. We also look at your in-major GPA and your overall GPA, and we do tend to look at the transcript to get a sense of what's the range of the courses that the student has taken. So, for example, a student whose GPA is a 4.0 but who has not taken, for example, any advanced courses in statistics would not be as competitive as a student who's a little bit lower, like a 3.8, 3.9, but who has challenged him or herself in those kind of courses. So we look at sort of, have you chosen a challenging range of courses, as well as what is the actual number of your GPA. We also like to see your CV. And we are open to receiving supplemental materials. So if, for example, a student's done a conference presentation, that's a really good thing to send to us as a supplemental material for the application. The real centerpiece of the application, though, is the personal statement, and that's where I really recommend students spend a lot of time. For all of our concentration areas, clinical science, IO, developmental science, and neuroscience and biological psychology, the #1 key factor is the fit between the student's research interest and experience and the research opportunities afforded by one or more of the faculty in our program. A student could have perfect GREs, perfect GPA, but if what they want to research doesn't fit with anyone in our program, then we're not a good match for them. There needs to be a fit between what you want to research and the training opportunities that we can offer here to be competitive for the program. So the kind of thing that can really make an application more competitive is to highlight in that personal statement, this is the extent of the research experience I've had. I've done this kind of interview. I've been able to test my own hypotheses. That's a really helpful thing to be able to show, is that you have experience developing and testing your own hypotheses. Even if it ends up not being in the area of a research that you want to pursue, the fact that you followed a research experience from developing hypotheses through carrying out the research to doing the analyses and presenting it, that shows that you've got that sort of pragmatic knowledge of the research experience that's going to be really useful in graduate school. In terms of numbers, with the GRE and GPA, I want to emphasize we don't have a firm cutoff for these. But in general, the GRE scores that are going to be most competitive are going to be above the 60th percentile, whether it's the verbal, quantitative, or the analytic writing section of the GRE. With the GPA, we do look at both in-major and overall GPA, and students are going to be most competitive if they're above about a 3.5, 3.6. If their GPA is below a 3.2, there needs to be some really good explanation for that. Again, it's not a firm cutoff, but that's in general what seems to be competitive across our program areas. For international students, we do require the TOEFL if you haven't attended an English-speaking institution, but we have the same requirements as the graduate school for that. If you're at a point right now where you haven't had a lot of research experience, that's what needs to be focused on more so than just simply retaking the GRE. So because that's the thing that makes you most competitive for our program, if you don't have experience working with humans where you're collecting data, then it's probably a good idea to try to get that experience before applying to our program. Most of the students who are most competitive for our program have at least one. Some have 2 or 3 years of experience working with a faculty mentor, where they've not only been able to do things like do data entry, conduct interviews, but they've also had that opportunity to contribute conceptually to the research, to think about what are the hypotheses that I should draw with this data set, to actually try to carry that through. And the most competitive have conference posters or manuscripts that they've submitted that they have been central contributors to. Students do not need a master's to apply to our program. It is a doctoral program, so students who enter the program without a master's will earn the master's degree along the way to the PhD. If students already have a master's when they apply, then after they're admitted, they can apply for a waiver of the master's thesis. And the waiver is granted if a committee within the student's concentration area agrees that the student's master's thesis basically fits the kind of thesis that we would have a student do here. So in other words, if it's an empirically based thesis where the student conducted data collection and tested hypotheses, that's probably pretty similar to the kind of thesis we do here. If it's more of a literature review kind of thesis, that's less likely that that'll get a thesis waiver. We are committed to only taking as many students as we can guarantee funding for 4 years. We don't guarantee beyond the fourth year, and we can't put it in writing that we will give you 4 years of funding, but when we accept a student to our program, we are making that commitment to ourselves and to the student that as long as you are in good standing in the program, we will find a way to fund you for 4 years. Regardless of how the student is able to fund themselves over the summer, whether through the department or through another source, a common thing across all of our program areas is that students are engaged in something related to their research over the summer. So it may be directly collecting data, it may be continuing to work with their faculty mentor. For our clinical students and for our IO students in particular, they may decide to do an externship over the summer as well. But it is important to know you don't take the summer off in graduate school, at least in our program you don't, that our students are still engaged in something that is related to their goals in our graduate program during the summer months. Most of our students are interested in job opportunities that involve research in one way or another. whether it's with a medical setting, a university setting, or whether they're teaching at a liberal arts college, for instance.